the only way to start your day.
None like any other. Today we're looking at that once again. Both our guests are seated in the studio already, and as we get into things, we're saying a very warm situation room welcome to Stella Agara, who is a governance and security analyst. Good morning, Stella.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Karibu Sana. Abdul Aziz Mohammed is a politician, and he's here with us this morning as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
You good?
Well,
Karibu.
Asante.
All right. So we're getting into a conversation this morning, but before we do, we want to welcome you to the show with today's proverb. We're going to give you some work to do already. I saw you don't have enough. And Dennis is going to share the proverb, and we would like to hear your interpretation of it.
So our proverb today comes from a very interesting country, a country that has the biggest economy in the continent, has a population of around 230 million people, over 250 ethnic groups, but you have three. So you have the Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, who are the majority and the biggest ethnic groups in the country. When it comes to their food, jollof rice, the best. You know, we talk about the outfit. Stands out. You know, she's looking at me, but it is
Everybody
okay.
thinks that the only food in Nigeria is jollof rice. But you can imagine the 350 languages, everyone has their own food. Anyway.
Let me talk about swallow. Swallow is also one of the foods that they do have.
Please, don't mind me.
But let's go to the proverb, right? So, water doesn't go bad unless it has salt. Water doesn't go bad unless it has salt. Stella, how would you interpret that?
I'm guessing water remains pure unless it is corrupted by somebody or somebody adds something in it. Many times, most of the items that are introduced into water will show up in the form of either objects or chemicals or salts. And so I'm just thinking, you can't spoil a good thing unless you add things that should not be in it.
Abdulaziz, how would you interpret that?
And water does not go bad unless you add salt. And it generally means, and everything that is good only becomes bad when something bad is introduced to it. And in relation to our country and our state, I don't know if I can relate it to it.
Your interpretation is always right.
Kenyans were very patient and very calm, and until their emotions were triggered. Yeah.
Well put.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You know, well, all right. So even as we get into this conversation this morning, and when we have conversations around the youth perspective, I think it has been perceived that we are only saying, look at the contribution that young people then would make towards politics or towards governance. But there can also be, listen to what the opinions are of the younger generation about what is happening in the country at the moment, or what we are saying is required to be done. And that would be the thrust of our conversation this morning. That it would seem as though it was the politicians or the pundits or those who are already in the game who had anything, if there was anything to say about what was happening. So today we are looking through opinions about things that are happening and looking at that from the lens of the younger population, who we already know, we've been told a million times, 75% of the population is younger people. So then their opinions matter, right? And it's not just about a young person who wants to be a governor or a young person who wants to be a member of parliament. It is that the majority of the population is also thinking and is also proactive about the things that are happening in the nation at the moment. So we're going to go through some of those things this morning, and we're going to look at what opinions are and probably food for thought for what needs to be done about some of those things. So let's start off, because we are going to be looking at a number of issues. Let's start off with a number of things that have been said by those in positions of authority across board. We start with the president, when he did make a mention of what police officers should do, whether it was coming from a place of emotion where he was angry and saying we can't have this destruction of property continue, but he did give an order where he said go ahead and maim. We also did hear from the the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration, where he said, you see somebody walking out of a police station? Done. We also did hear from the Belgood Member of Parliament when he said, no, I'm not saying maim, I'm saying shoot to kill. These are conversations that are happening for people in the country who would protest in one way or another or do anything. And we'd like to get your thoughts about what does it happen? What does it do to the psyche of folks who are sitting on the periphery, those who may want to enter into these circles, or those who are just trying to have a better country? We'll start off with you and try to see how, like, now we can, get into that.
Let me first just openly say that was very irresponsible of the president, equally responsible of the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Defense. Those are not pronouncements that should be coming out of people holding power at their level. It was also very responsible of the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, and we have now established that he is truly bothered by the statements that he made. Leadership requires that individuals remain centered even in the midst of troubles. And so if they find themselves unable to hold themselves together when there's trouble in the nation, it basically means they were not quite prepared for the assignment that they took up. That's number one. Number two, it is clear that this actions are being taken to scare young people from coming out on the streets. For me, did not start when they made those announcements of shoot to maim, shoot to kill. It started when we had reports of rape of women in the protests. We, I believe, have all noticed that there are quite some strong women's voices in the protests in Kenya. And one of the weapons of war that has been used across the continent, you'll find stories in DRC Congo, you'll find stories in Angola and many places that have been war torn before, is rape. Rape is supposed to inhibit women. It's supposed to scare women. It's supposed to cause them not to want to show up. Control women. And in many places, sometimes it's not necessarily even just rape. It's the fear that there could be sexual abuse that causes women sometimes not to come out and work late in the night in a 24-hour economy. And so this is not a small thing we're talking about, especially when citizens are coming out to exercise a right that is guaranteed in the Constitution, a right that is guaranteed in instruments that Kenya is party to, including the African Convention on Democracy, Elections and Governance, the Africa Youth Charter that requires youth participation, the National Youth Council Act. I don't know whether we should talk about its state now or the amended state that they're anticipating. But basically, it first of all instills fear, number one, but number two, and most important, it inhibits the most vulnerable groups from coming out. So if that protest is truly of interest to people with disability, they may not show up to come and exercise their voice. They may not show up to come and say what it is they need out of this government. Do we want a country where certain individuals feel like it is not safe for them to show up? Do we want a country where the youth are going to be comparing their muscles with the government? And if we do, unfortunately, the president has not taken time to understand who Gen Z are. He truly has not. Because if he knew who they were, one of the things he would not do is lock horns with them.
Abdulaziz?
And before I give my opinion on that, I would like to tell the nation that the Kenyan youth are currently guided by the famous words of former French President Charles de Gaulle, who said, politics is too serious of a matter to be left to only politicians. Yeah, that's why you find young people folding their shirts and coming into play, because the young people have been put aside for longest time. And if you look at the current regime, and the driver is incompetent, makanga hana form, na tunaona tukiangalia tu gari tunaona ni accident tu ahead. So now coming to the utterances, and the utterance by the president, I think, came right after the Sabasaba.
Yes.
And if you look at the Sabasaba day itself, I think the death toll was around 31 deaths.
They're giving after 25th of June and Sabasaba combined is coming to about 39.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, such utterances coming from the head of state in such a mourning period. It shows insensitivity and irresponsibility. And we will like to look at these things semantically. Why did this come in? Why did the statement come in Swahili? Was it a deliberate move? Because we know, for one thing is for sure, that the sentiments were just a subtle endorsement of the existing police brutality, which the young people were coming out to condemn. Okay? Now, we look at it semantically. We know for sure the big brothers are always watching. And this statement came in Swahili. So, was it deliberate that if later the big brother room for excuses, like I was misquoted, taken out of context? You get my point? So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy in these statements. And then the second thing, why are the people around the head of state, or the ones who are saying this, why are they still roaming freely? Why are they not being summoned? Yeah, because if I were, as Abdulaziz, to make something similar to that, before even we are done with this interview, you would find a fleet of Subarus fueled with our own money outside these studios. So I think we don't live in a country anymore. We live in the satirical book of George Orwell's The Animal Farm, where some animals are more equal than others.
But then again, you look at the situation where we are as a country, and the right to demonstrate, Article 37 is there. The article of movement, Article 39, you're supposed to move within this country and no one should ask you where it is you're going. But you look at the demonstrations and how that happened, and these are actually the articles that were disrespected by those with the responsibility of maintaining law and order. But then again, you hear what the president say, and you want to look at it in terms of semantics, Swahili, to create all this confusion and whatnot. Yesterday, I saw the French ambassador speaking some very good Swahili, and that shows you they understand what it is that is happening in the country. But there is a semblance of mtadu. I am in power. You need to respect me. So when you talk about this, Stella, seems as if we're operating in such a situation where we're supposed to play by the president's book, not the constitution and the law.
And unfortunately, we will not do that, Dennis. He definitely wants us to play by his book. He's hoping that he can create new rules for a nation that took a very, very long time in creating a constitution that would favor its people, a constitution that was created to respond to a very repressive environment. We had a government that did not care about the people, but most importantly, we had a government that did not care about harming its people to cause them to comply. I remember during Moi's time, there was a time when the multipartyism had started, and I will betray my age even as I continue to tell the story. I had been warned by my mother and by my teachers that we were not allowed to put up the two-finger sign, because apparently, if you do so, you will disclose your intentions to support the opposition, and Moi did not want an opposition. There are communities in this country that do not have one finger because they tried to raise two fingers. They were cut. You will find them today. They exist in this nation. So when we come to a time when we have another president saying, shoot to maim, is he saying that he also wants to leave a stamp of young people who do not have legs walking around this country, having a mother they tried to him? This country has a constitution, and as Dennis, you mentioned, Article 37 guarantees the right The limitation of those rights is not something that is just done on a carte blanche by the cabinet secretary or by whoever. There are rules around which that kind of limitation is done. And one of those is to ensure, I think it's Article 24, sub-article B or C, to ensure that as you're limiting that right, you do not derogate it. So when the president says, "Amta tusumbua, you nimechoka, enough is enough," what is he saying? If we have something to say in this nation, we have a right to say it. Even without that constitution, one of the things he must understand is that the people who have given him power by virtue of the social contract have a right to remind him when he's not serving them the way he should. Number two, apart from just derogating the right, it also should not take away the spirit and the core of that right. So the spirit of that particular provision was to ensure that when people go to the streets, they don't get beaten. You've seen the Reverend Joyers being beaten on the pavement. So it shocks the nation every time it shows up on TV because we don't know how, Africans don't know how to mistreat people of the collar. So when you see someone being beaten up and then you ask what they're being beaten about and you realize it's governance, the constitution, it jolts you, you know. And now we have a president who thinks he can cause all of us to shut up, not tell him that we don't like what he's doing. I mean, though I'm talking about things as simple as telling him that we don't like the projects that you're running.
Right.
He
or
has
even the manner
forgotten-
in which you're running.
He
them. Yeah.
has forgotten that we, as citizens, have a responsibility to select the projects that he's going to be working on, because in the contract we have with him, we cede power, we cede resources in terms of taxes, and then after we cede those resources, we tell him what to do with our money. He has completely lost his mind if he thinks that the citizens of Kenya are going to operate in a space where we first of all are afraid of him, and then we don't tell him what to do. And number three, and most important, he has completely lost his mind if he thinks Kenyans are children he can tell what to do, and then they need to shut up and comply. Unfortunately, he comes from a background where, not necessarily a background, but basically he comes from a history of having not supported the Constitution of Kenya 2010.
But we
So it's
are
no
actually-
surprise that he's behaving the way he's behaving.
Okay, but we are, I want to bring you in this because we around this conversation oftentimes, and I think actually that we do it, and maybe it's wrong, when we use the word kids or children.
Yeah.
Right? When I think kids and children, I think of kids and children. I think of the children in the house that you need to provide a meal for and you need to do this. And that is the reference that is being used, not just by the president, but others even in the conversation, and talking about the kids on the children in the street. And I say, no, they're not children or kids in the street. These are Kenyans who are actually fighting and protesting for something to be better in the country. So I think even the references that we use, the words that you speak come from an abundance of your mind and heart. So you can imagine that this irritant that is trying to tell me how to run things is just a child that I can swat away or ask to go sit in the corner. And I think even as we use the words, we shouldn't say children or kids, because then it then gives rise to that you know, that's what you think, that somebody's bothering me. I want to give you, go play with something in the corner over there, and then you wouldn't bother me, you know? But it's not. And that's why we started the conversation that we started this morning, because there must be an opinion. There must be a contribution to this conversation, to this discourse, to this action. And so do you think that because anybody who wants to get rid of this irritating situation is saying that, well, the millions of people who are in the street they're just kids who don't know what they're doing? Is that not a wrong way to look at it?
You know, the problem with this regime is they seem to be very confused on so many matters, because some of us may be the same age as their children, but we're not children anymore. We understand, we even understand the game better than them. You get my point? So that is, I think, the problem and the confusion. And coming on what Dennis has asked about the 2010, the Constitution and the rights, you know, let's look at this thing realistically. And I am a very straight shooter, because the people around the power are not speaking truth to power. Then we are automatically obliged, and it is duty upon us to speak truth to the people in power. Coming to the Constitution, there's a famous chant about one term, which even they even tried to criminalize. Now I have a different opinion on that, and that is something I can comfortably say, that William Ruto is a one-term president, just like Kibaki and Uhuru were one-term president. How and why? Unless this regime have suspended the 2010 Constitution, anytime a president is being sworn in, he is sworn in for a one term. Unless with the current regime it was different, they were sworn in for 2 terms. So why should anyone get angry when I say you are one term? Were you sworn in for 2 terms? Unless we are being led by men and women with emotional and political immaturity. Otherwise, I think they should be even the ones chanting. It's one term. The second term depends on what and how you prove yourself.
Okay.
So you know, I think this is a very oblivious and, you know, delusional regime. They forget there's a constitution. They have put the constitution aside and believed in kifua. Kila kitu ni kugonga tukifua, chest thumping.
He says, though, Stella, that, he's doing all these things. I think his latest statements, I think as late as yesterday, where he said, look, we're creating the jobs. Just give me, I don't even know what time frame he had given people. Give me until Friday. Was it Friday? He made another Friday or Monday. Mutakwa kazini. Give me, he's still making the promises.
Yeah.
When the manifesto, which was the plan for the Kenya Kwanza government, was that young people, was that, the country, essentially, the job situation was going to be better. The environment was going to be more conducive. And he says, you know what? You've been bothering me all this time.
Good.
Let me work. That's what he said. Let me work. Is it a bother that these protests are coming? People are shouting one term. People are saying Butu must go. People are saying all sorts of things. The man can't work.
And then let me come. And then I don't know if I don't know if you've seen there's a pattern with the current regime. Or they think everything they do is a favor. I don't know. It's like a favor they're doing us. For instance, the jobs you've been talking about. There's this ID thing. I was discussing with some people just the other day. The ID vetting he removed from the people on the border countries. They feel like it's a favor they have done for you, which ideally is an injustice that had been there. This is something that was ought to have done behind the camera. Si ati unakuja nje unasema, nimetoa ID vetting, you have to blindly support us. What happens to the policies? You remove an injustice, and then you make it look like a very big favor. So I think, anyway, just go ahead.
One of the challenges that this government has got nothing to do with governance. It's an attitude problem. When you have a government that thinks it can address you like a child, and I'm glad you brought it up, Ndo, because I'm so fed up of listening to people saying, we are addressing the president as a father. We are appealing to your side as a father. He has already proven that he is completely unable to see the Kenyan people as his children. And so any of us bring ourselves to a place of addressing him at that level is causing him to actually have more power to continue patronizing us. The entire establishment, especially the people who speak for him, or at least are purported to be speaking for him, have Kenyans. You something, they tell you the other thing. And it's almost like they are so bitter about something that they just want Kenyans to feel bad every day. So they will find something worse to tell you about things that you say you don't like. You tell him that you don't like this affordable housing thing because you're paying for it and somebody else is collecting the house. And then he comes and tells you you're busy disrupting work. You need to let me work. What are you doing? Who are you working for? Who employed you in that job? Just as a reminder, in case his mind is where Mugabe's mind was when he was being asked to leave and he's saying, where should I go? He needs to be reminded that he was employed by these Kenyans. He needs to be reminded that he's being paid by these Kenyans. Some of those Gen Zs who he's seeing on the streets are actually people who pay him because of the kind of business that they're engaging in. But aside from that, I'm thrown aback every time people say that it's just the youth who are on the streets. That it's just Gen Z who are on the streets. One of the things I learned, I supported Baba for a very long time. I have supported Baba's campaigns from the time he was in LDP.
And yet you speak in history. Why?
So because my mind has departed from that place for quite a while now. And one of the things I noticed is that whenever there are protests, every politician will say the youth. But I knew some of the people who were on the streets, and I knew they were not youth. A country that appreciates its laws and does not try to tinker with its laws the way, for example, the president himself has sponsored some of his allies to interfere with the National Youth Council Act, would know that a youth in this country is a person who has attained the age of 18 and has not attained the age of 35. For that reason, anybody within that age gap is actually a youth, but most importantly, there's a component of them towards the higher ages who do not think like children. Most likely they are married to someone and they have children to go back home to. So if you shoot them on the streets, if you stop them from saying what they need to say, you're basically saying that they have no space to vent. Anytime individuals do not have space to influence policies, laws through mainstream mechanisms, what they do is to show up and make those submissions in public spaces. It could be a public forum. It could be in your studio here and do. It could be on the streets. Kenyans have a right to exercise that right to assembly and association and voice their rights anywhere one of the things that you will not stop Kenyans from doing is saying what they think. As long as they say it respectfully, there's no defamation and all, there's nothing wrong with Kenyans expressing themselves. So when you find a president who thinks he can tell Kenyans, not just him, I hate that I have to mention the names of these people, but when you see people like Sudi telling us amta tusumbua, and asking us whether it's only the men from one community who have certain items that we shouldn't be talking about in public, why are we being subjected to those kinds of conversations? Is it that the conversation has gotten that low? Is it that they have nothing more valuable to offer? Or is it that Kenyans have allowed mediocrity for so long that any kind of rubbish, passes with our government?
Yeah.
I think we must ask ourselves difficult questions. We must ask ourselves difficult questions about what we view as a leader and what we vote for as a leader. But most importantly, we must ask ourselves, what can we do about the recall clauses we have, about the right, that particular right that is now being fought tremendously. And if we are not careful, this government may actually take it away completely and ensure that they do not take away that which was guaranteed in our constitution. But number 3, and most important, as you mentioned, that we get this government to begin to understand that they're not just functioning under the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza, but they're also functioning under other instruments that this country has committed itself to. Ruto may not have been a president when this country became a party to the UN Security Council Resolution 2250, but he has a responsibility to ensure that there is youth participation in governance and many other processes, including prevention of violence and governance itself, to avoid finding themselves in the area of crime. These things are being monitored. It is not just the previous governments that are being tested on these instruments. Even his government is being tested on these instruments. We need to remind them that this country has a people who have been undergoing a lot of education. They are not the same people he knew. We are fundamentally different now. We have understood our laws differently. And the growth of democracy in our country has caused deep education to happen amongst our people. That is why most of our neighbors are surprised when we're able to discuss our budget, our constitution in the detail that we do. Because for most of them in their countries, they haven't gotten to a place of that kind of access. For as long as the constitution allows that kind of access, people will continuously be informed. This is irreversible. Even if he does not allow this to happen through our mainstream education system, our dining tables at home when you're having dinner are now civic education spaces. It cannot be avoided. I would rather they shape up or they jump ship.
Now, it's a question of shape up or jump ship. Now, let's look at the issues that the young people, Kenyans, are pretty much just telling the president as they went to the streets. Because remember, all this started during the Finance Bill 2024. Now, let's talk about accountability. Is it a favor? I would say no. Talk about police brutality and corruption. Cost of life inflation is high, Mr. President. Please make it affordable for us. And you look at the issues that were being raised, and someone says, nyinyi watoto wazazi ongereni na watoto wenu, mimi hawataniletea mchezo. And one asks the question, the president thinks one would say that he's greater than the people of Kenya, or even greater than the constitution that has donated the power for him to be in that office. And as these conversations continue going on, you hear his lieutenants going to the streets and saying whatever it is they have to say. But there is a semblance of silence from institutions that are supposed to oversight or ensure that there is some semblance of normalcy in the country. NCIC is quiet, yet we know whatever it is that has been said. No investigation has been opened against Murkomen, even the president himself, on the utterances that they have made. And one asks the question, the institutions that are supposed to ensure that justice is given to the people of Kenya and the law is respected are silent. Have they been captured, Abdulaziz?
Not yet. They haven't been captured. And as I said earlier, we still live in that book, The Animal Farm. Clearly, we don't live in a country called Kenya anymore. And mine is to remind the people in leadership and urge them just to calm down emotionally. Whether they'll have to go through anger management courses, they just need to calm down. And remember one thing, that the president applied for a job in 2022. I was among the people who approved his job. I am his employer. And as things stand, I am not happy with how he has done. I'm not happy with his scorecard. This is a government that sold to us a dream in the name of the plan. This is the government that campaigned on the promises of uplifting the lives of Mama Mboga and Boda Boda people. The same Mama Mboga and Boda Boda are not happy. They feel like they've been conned. So I am, people should consider, these people should see me as the employer. And, one would wonder what happens, what kind of discussions happen in these cabinet meetings. Is it either they are discussing killing Kenyans or stealing from Kenyans?
What do you think needs to be the point now of action? Because we talk about. I keep saying that we can lament. We talk about we lament, or we go into lamentation over and over. But there has to be at some point. I think any inspirational speaker, anybody will say, okay, yeah, have a good cry, talk about how bad the thing is. But at some point, even David in the Bible or others who would take off the sackcloth, go take a bath, and face the thing head on, right? So what are the action points? We can protest. We can. And I think even when you start to think about this is what needs to be done, you put yourself up for a position of leadership because you feel that you can, because you have the character and or the integrity and authority to do so, or start to have conversations with people about what we can or couldn't. You talked about dinner tables being centers for civic education in this day and age. But what need to be the action points? Because we must move. We must move from a place of we can see how bad it is. And unfortunately, every day invites a new scenario when something is worse than the day before, unfortunately. But do we take it all in stride? And then what do we do? And it's for everybody. It's collective. It has to be done in concert. But what are those action points? Whether you're in government or whether you are watching or whether you're in a different space. And we'll start with you, Stella.
Previously, several years ago, if I started answering that question, I would first start by saying the youth need to educate themselves, they need to engage in research and begin to understand the governance systems. We now are taking a lot of time to educate themselves. As a matter of fact, they found creative ways of ensuring that they have information on governance. We should continue doing that. Number one, engage in a lot of research, engage in in-depth discussions about our governance, and constantly find opportunities to input into the governance of this nation. As part of that, I'm also saying that they should not stop doing what they're doing, whether it is interventions on the laws by submitting memoranda when there's public participation, or submitting questions to their representatives in the National Assembly so that their representatives can ask those questions at question time. Whatever it is that the mechanism that they can use to influence policy, they should actually take advantage of right now. Number three is anything that requires them to go to the streets, they should not shy away from it, because it is still a right guaranteed under our constitution, irrespective of the ills that this government has decided to commit around the same. Now, I'm troubled. I'm troubled because several years ago, I attended the United Nations General Assembly Special Session for Children. When I went there, I was just excited about being in New York and shopping.
Yeah.
But then after certain conversations, I realized that there was a lot of conversations about national youth councils and ensuring that there's youth leadership with legacy. So coming out of that place, I really committed myself to implementation of National Youth Council acts to provide space for young people to participate. At the time of coming out of there, at least the region of East Africa had been organized in such a way that we would be working together to push for a National Youth Council. Kenya and Tanzania were the only countries in the East Africa region that did not have national youth councils. The rest of the countries had national youth councils. All those councils are elected. They are not appointed by a cabinet secretary. They're not appointed by a president. They are elected. And the election process is normally open, observed by the entire nation and the electoral management body. And so when we got the opportunity to influence the creation of a national youth council in Kenya, I representing my organization at the time, the Africa Youth Trust, and a few representatives from the youth agenda at the time were able to support the Ministry of Youth Affairs in pushing for the establishment of a National Youth Council. This president, who is troubled by the youth today, fought the existence of that National Youth Council, not alone, together with a few of his cronies in parliament at that time, because they discovered that there's a young person who's being elected in where, I don't know, I'm saying Kisumu Town East, just as an example.
Yeah.
And the votes that have elected him are about 10,000. And so they're thinking, how many more votes do I need to add before this person becomes an MP? So they started looking at them as competition. But the reason why it was important to create that platform is because there's a youth bulge. And that youth bulge, if not addressed, is going to cause problems. And if you don't give them what they need, you've not given them jobs, you've not given them finances, you're not supporting their endeavors, at least provide a platform where they're going to voice their ideas, make suggestions of how they're going to actually, achieve their aspirations in life. Now, they started tinkering with this National Youth Council Act. He started it with the Honorable Gideon Keter at the time, and now it's I think Joshua Kandiye, who's now who presented the latest bill in Parliament last year, 2023-2024. And part of the amendment is to cause this council to be appointed by the principal. The cabinet secretary. In Uganda, and this is a bad example, they have a National Youth Council that is elected from the ground. What the president has done, because we know his behavior, he has made sure that when those elections are being done, he is ensuring that he also has candidates who are vying for those positions. So in the system, he will have youth who are rising from the system who are also a part of his system, and they're able to communicate his policies in the group. In countries like South Africa, they have a National Youth Council has been functioning for years. The National Youth Council is a mentorship platform for leadership. It creates the pathway through which young people actually are channeled into leadership in their nation, sometimes even in cabinet meetings, and it has resulted in Namibia having some of the youngest cabinet secretaries that we've had in the continent. If only this president had a vision, he would have known at that time that this is not the thing to fight. That if he had created this space, the youth he's seeing on the streets would have first gone to their leadership at the National Youth Council, and then communicated their needs at that level, and then they would find their way into the policies of the nation. Of course, self-esteem issues cause them to come and fight this entity. I am saying, first of all, Mr. President, you're so late on this agenda because the rest of the region is far ahead. But this is definitely a platform that must be created, and there's no way you can fear the voice of young people because it is here to stay.
Who midwives that? And then who is the foster parent of this process? Are we looking into the current politicians' pool to foster? Who midwives this process? Well, you're saying late in the game, all right, it's okay. And even if you're going to get onto that, is there enough to then say, from the pool that you have, these are the ones that will shepherd this process to bring up? Because if you look at what's happening in South Africa, you have leaders today who were born from that process. So you can't just stand up today and say, well, I'm a youth leader. From where? You have to have been bred. That's why I do agree that a certain amount of experience is needed.
Absolutely.
But then who midwives that?
So the beauty of it is that the law itself creates the mechanism that sorts it out and causes it to come to existence. It actually puts the responsibility on the Ministry of Youth Affairs. The Ministry of Youth Affairs is responsible for creating the steering committee that will focus on the elections. It also is responsible for monitoring to ensure that every region of this country is represented in those elections. The bodies that result from that, which is a delegates forum and National Youth Convention, at least according to the act as it is right now, are bodies that function on their own, and the National Youth Council is supposed to be coordinating them and convening them whenever there's a matter for dialogue. He would not be asking the former Prime Minister to convene a dialogue if he had that platform, because they could be convened at any point for dialogue on any matter, one matter, many matters. The other thing is that there was a provision for fundraising for that platform, but also for Treasury to fund the platform. I'm seeing what the Honorable Kandiye is trying to do is to say that the creation of this bill will not cost any money. There is no way youth will not cost you money in this world. And so, first of all, I think I'm going to ask the president, and this is figurative. I'm not insulting anybody, to put his dogs on a leash. Stop fighting this thing. Figure out a mechanism to create it, and create a space for those voices that Ndo was talking about when he started this show, to be vented in a structured way, and in a way that you can actually have a chance to review the report the way you normally review the National Security Report. Aside from that, Parliament has a responsibility to monitor the implementation of the work of that particular council, and they also have a responsibility to feed Parliament whenever Parliament is making legislation on anything, to feed them on the youth perspectives on the same. The National Youth Council of Uganda is constantly coming here would be the people who would be advising the government on what to do to address the situation as it is now, because they don't trust them. They're speaking to themselves and tired of telling the government what to do. If they had representatives who had a responsibility to speak to government and it was functioning well, then they would be doing it. Right now, we have a CEO, we don't have a council, and the country continues to reel under the weight of educated, motivated, very intentional young people who will not shut up because better than they are. Understand what now our budget means. Previously, there were people who could not understand what a billion is.
Or that there was a finance bill.
Or there was a finance bill every year. This group knows exactly what that means. They know the import of some of that money being lost. They know when the Auditor General is constantly saying that we are losing this money in whatever. They know what that means in terms of services for them. And so provide a space for those voices to be heard, number one, though, but number two, for that talent to be tapped into. So if you have brilliant people making brilliant suggestions, you people have invited some of them here into your studio. I've seen many of them in different media stations providing solutions for this country. Why not tap into that resource and ensure that then the country is benefiting from the fresh minds, the fresh visions, because the people we have in power now have lost imagination. They completely lack vision. They have no direction, and that is why they think they can still win the minds of Kenyans with the old ways that we used to have of announcing roads, markets, and God knows what else. When we are living in an AI age and we should be dealing with fresh challenges, like where are we going to get the water to cool the servers if we choose to advance our AI technology in Kenya? You know,
Abdulaziz, with the solutions that are now being put in place, one would assume that these are things that are in the spaces that conversations are happening. There is a need to put the youth of the country into spaces where they intentionally feel like they're contributing to the country. Can this government sit back, look around, and find a solution to this? Can they turn things around? Do they have that time?
They don't have it's not an enough time to turn around because they've missed most of the time, and they are almost halfway now. But the most important thing right now that can come as a solution is first to implement the constitution as it is. But clearly, the constitution is not being implemented. And the problem, these things, this uprising and the protest did not just happen in a vacuum. This was, a long anger that was coming. As I told you, after the elections, we gave this government, they hyped their campaign and their manifesto. So we gave them a year to see what they're going to do. What did they do in that year? They came with bravado and, and show-offs, show of opulence. People, we don't have a Silicon Valley in Nairobi. But people who could not even afford to raise 50,000 shillings before campaign, we saw them wearing 20 million worth watches and other accessories. You see, those are the things that triggered the anger. Number two, the majority, a good number or a significant number of the Kenyan population is considered youthful. About, I think, 75%, if I'm not wrong. And if you look at data, 67% of the unemployed people in Kenya are youthful. And if you also look at the mean age, the average age of Kenya is about, I think, 20. And the population, 75% of the population is considered youthful. If you look at that, does not translate into public service. That does not translate into policy making, decision making tables. If you look at the average age of the current cabinet, is about 50 something average age, and the population age is about 20. And majority are young people. So don't you see that is like pouring a new wine into an old wine skin? Hence, this the reason why we have problems now. You get my point?
Right.
So I think something has to be done. The cries and the noise made by the young people has to be taken seriously. And, we should stop bravado and the chest thumping that comes in the form of, huyu anachochea hawa, parents should talk to their children. These people are not children anymore. They understand the game better than all these people. If you look at the cabinet composition, in this current government. They are the least incompetent cabinet I have ever seen.
The most, are you saying the least incompetent?
The most incompetent,
okay.
sorry. The most, because compared to the cabinet I have lived to, like the Kibaki time. During the Kibaki time, Dennis, I remember there used to be powerful people in cabinet. I was in school. If we hear the names of the George Saitoti, mathematician, a professor in mathematics, Fulani, engineer, but we still have engineers and professors in this current cabinet, but engineers and professors of corruption, not professors of mathematics. And if you look at the level of incompetence in the current cabinet, some of them even are not even qualified to run my poultry farm in Kajiado. Yeah.
Are we seeing a shift, Stella, even as we come? Sorry.
We have more competent young under 30 people than the cabinet. And yet these are the people who you want to make policies for us.
Well, that's it. And I guess it's tied to what I was going to ask here, because do we see that there's a shift whereby we saw coming out, and this was around most of the continent, if we want to take a Pan-African view, that out of the time where the struggle, where you had the different people in different parts of the continent fighting for freedom, when it came to, there was flag independence, but then there was the independence that folks were truly looking for to remove themselves now from the dregs or the shackles of that colonialism. Then after that, we saw that more and more people started to get into government, not necessarily because they wanted to make their nation states better, but because that they wanted better for self. Do we now see a shift where if anybody wants to enter government today, they are actually wanting to do this for the betterment of the nation? Or do we still see a proliferation of this personal expediency, which many think can be achieved if you get into positions of leadership?
No, I like your question, and I like your question because of the season that this continent finds itself in. But before I respond to your question, allow me to just add two more things on the list of what should be done practically. Kenya, like I mentioned earlier, is party to the UN Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security. The pillars of this particular resolution are participation, protection, prevention of violence. It also talks about partnerships and disengagement. If we harnessed the kind of participation that young people are engaging in this country, this could actually be a source of funding for even more youth participation in the country. The president knows the ministry under which the National Action Plan for this resolution is. If he can just go and read it, everything that is happening today was predicted years ago. I have been supporting the process of this resolution under the Commonwealth for years, and I know that we had seen this coming, and we had advised the government, and we had sat with cabinet secretaries, we had sat with the county of Nairobi and alerted them that this would be happening if only they took some of the policies that are made seriously. The last one is to the young people of this country. Vote wisely. Vote wisely. You now know what filth looks like. So do not vote for anybody who does not uphold the rule of law, has ignored a court subpoena, has ignored any court summons in this country. Do not vote for anybody who has integrity issues. And on that one, I encourage the young people of this country to be as Puritan as they can get. If it means everybody on the list is disqualified and only a few people remain standing, I would encourage them to do that. Do not support anybody who has either acted in a way that meted violence on young people, or women, or anybody who has spoken in a way that would suggest that it's okay to met violence upon people. So I'm talking about the Kamkets who just made statements that you'll meet our goons, and I'm also talking about the president and his minister for interior who said shoot to wherever the shootings are. So I thought I just needed to throw that in. And of course, there are many other benchmarks that we have to continue thinking about and strategizing about as we move towards the elections. But those should be the bare minimum. Anybody who has not supported this constitution, does not uphold it, should not be on your mouth in terms of campaign.
Right.
Don't use your resources, don't use your capacities. Is there a shift? I think there is. There is a fundamental shift, and Dennis and Do, I'm a deep Christian. Those Christians who search the places where the Bible indicates that the Lord is hiding his things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I understand about this season is that there was supposed to be a revival coming out of Kenya. when people hear revival, they just think praise, worship,
Yeah.
and singing and everything. But then there was a different kind of revival that was supposed to be coming out of Kenya for this season. If you see how the Gen Z protests influenced other protests around the continent last year, it should tell you that there's an equipping that has happened amongst the young people of this country that is having regional influence and is having an influence on many other people. Not everybody can wake up in the morning and speak to a nation like the two of you. It is not something that just happens randomly. It is favor that also comes divinely, that allows you to be able to sit in a studio and people actually take interest in the show. And so when you see Kenyan young people engaging in protests, and then the rest of the region, our neighbors, not just our neighbors, across Senegal, Nigeria, were all planning protests in their own country, should tell you that there's something that was supposed to rise out of this place. What was supposed to rise out of this place, apart from just the revival for Christianity or for God, was supposed to be an awakening of this continent.
Yeah.
In terms of progress and access to the kind of change that we want to see for that second or third or fourth liberation, there's a way that Kenya was positioned to awaken people to what we need to get. Unfortunately, we've allowed the adopted child, Ibrahim Traore, to be the one to carry the agenda now. I don't think it's a bad thing. Somebody needs to carry the agenda, and if the time has come and the season has come, God will make it happen anyway.
But it can be followed.
We must reposition ourselves in that place and constantly be the voices of change, not just change in terms of getting access to leadership and getting good governance, but change in terms of ensuring that this continent is liberated from neocolonialism, it's liberated from the other isms that have been problems like that have been affecting women, youth, and all generations, including patriarchy that has continued to cause people to believe that children cannot address leadership because they are children.
Of course.
I think there's room, and I'm happy about where we are going. I'm just saying we as a people need to know that we are chosen for a very critical assignment, and we must continue to do it.
Indeed. Thank you. And our time is up.
Final
Unfortunately,
remarks.
10 seconds. I have to
Yeah,
go to,
the leadership should understand that Kenyan youth are well read, well enlightened, and well educated. And this station being the house of African proverb, I want to borrow from an African proverb that says, a group of sheep led by a lion will defeat a group of lions led by a sheep. Because of the incompetence, Kenyan young people feel like they are a group of sheep. They could be like a group of lions led by a sheep. Yeah.
Abdulaziz Mohammed, politician, Stella Agara, governance and security analyst, thank you for being here this morning. Really appreciate it. At 3 minutes past 8. Good morning.
This is